You want me to cosign what? That was the only thought racing through my head when my uncle sat me down one evening. I can still picture the moment vividly, the way the kitchen light flickered above us, casting long shadows across the room. He had that serious look, the kind that makes your stomach twist. Before a single word comes out, his hands were folded on the table, his posture stiff, and his eyes locked onto mine like he was preparing for a difficult confession. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he had rehearsed this conversation in his head all day long. And then he said it. It's about your mom. She needs help. I froze. At her age, 74, frail, and already battling more health issues than I could keep track of. I immediately assumed the worst. Was it her heart? Her blood pressure? Had the arthritis finally left her bedridden? But no, it wasn't about her medications, or her aching joints, or her fragile bones. This time, the crisis was something else entirely. It was about her teeth, or, to be more accurate, the fact that she barely had any left. I sat there, stunned, not sure whether to laugh at the absurdity or cry at the reality. Of all the battles my mom had faced in her life, this was the one I didn't see coming, and yet, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. My mom has never been the kind of person to take care of her teeth. Growing up, I can't remember a single time when she looked forward to a dental appointment. She brushed her teeth, sure, but flossing? Forget it. And when it came time for her regular cleanings or checkups, there was always an excuse. Sometimes it was money. We can't afford it this month. Sometimes it was fear. I hate the dentist. I'll go next time. And sometimes, I think, it was just denial. I feel fine, so nothing's wrong. Years of those excuses piled up. And as the years went by, her teeth began to decay. Her gums weakened, and she quietly lived with the pain until it couldn't be hidden anymore. Now decades of avoidance had caught up with her. I listened as my uncle explained what the dentist had said. The infection in her gums was severe, so severe that her bone loss was extreme. The dentures she tried to use wouldn't stay in, no matter how much adhesive she bought. She'd glue them down in the morning, and by dinner, they'd be loose, sliding around whenever she tried to eat. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was humiliating. My mom had stopped eating with friends. She hated going out to family gatherings. She smiled less. She struggled to chew even the softest foods. Meals had turned into something she dreaded, not enjoyed. The dentist told her there was only one solution left: dental implants. Not just a partial set, not one or two teeth replaced here and there, but a full set of implants to restore her ability to eat, speak, and smile with confidence. And then my uncle said the part that made my chest tighten. The cost. Nearly $18,000. $18,000! I remember leaning back in my chair, my mind spinning. That number didn't just sound high. It sounded impossible. My mom lives on Social Security, just $100 a month. No savings, no assets, no backup plan. There was no way she could qualify for financing on her own. That's when my uncle looked at me. His face softened, his eyes pleading in a way that made my heart ache. He told me he couldn't cosign. He's retired, living on a fixed income. If he tied himself to a loan like that, he'd risk his own security. So he asked me, the one child who had finally started to get my finances in order, the one who had just clawed my way out of credit card debt, the one who had plans of my own for dental care I desperately needed. At first, my gut reaction was immediate. She's my mom. Of course I should help. But then, like a cold wave crashing over me, the weight of reality hit. Co-signing didn't just mean putting my name on a piece of paper. It meant I would be fully responsible for that $18,000 loan if she couldn't pay. And something deep inside me told me she probably couldn't. For years, my mum had avoided the dentist like it was the plague. She brushed her teeth daily, yes, but flossing. That was a foreign concept to her. And as for regular checkups, forget it. There was always some excuse ready on her lips. A new reason why this year just wasn't the right time. Sometimes it was money. We can't afford it, not right now. Other times it was fear. I don't want them poking around in my mouth. And often, I think it was denial. I feel fine, so there can't be anything wrong. As a kid, I didn't question it. I just accepted that going to the dentist wasn't something my family did regularly. But looking back, I realized those skipped appointments weren't harmless. Each excuse built up, year after year, until the damage could no longer be hidden. Decades of avoidance had finally caught up with her. The dentist didn't sugarcoat it. He told her the infection in her gums was advanced and severe. So much bone had been lost that traditional dentures weren't even an option anymore. She had already tried them, desperate for a solution. But no matter how much adhesive she bought, the dentures wouldn't stay put. Imagine living like that, trying to glue fake teeth into your mouth every morning, only to feel them shift and slide by lunchtime. Imagine biting into something soft, like a piece of bread, and feeling the whole set slip loose. Imagine knowing that, at any moment, they might pop out in front of someone. For my mom, eating had turned into an ordeal. What should have been simple, chewing, swallowing, enjoying a meal, had become a source of pain and humiliation. Even speaking clearly was hard sometimes. She'd cover her mouth when she talked. She smiled less and less. Family dinners, which used to be the highlight of her week, became something she dreaded. The dentist explained the only remaining option: dental implants. But not one or two implants to patch things up. She needed a full set, a complete restoration, a chance to eat without pain, to smile without embarrassment, to simply live without constantly worrying about her teeth betraying her. Then came the number. Nearly $18,000. It didn't just sting, it knocked the wind out of me. $18,000. For some people, that might be manageable with planning, saving, and insurance. But for my mum, it was impossible. She survives on Social Security, just $100 a month. That barely covers groceries, utilities, and her medications. Savings, non-existent. Assets, none. Backup plan, there wasn't one. And when she tried to apply for financing, she was denied immediately. Of course she was. On paper, she looked like a terrible risk. And honestly, she was. That's when my uncle, her roommate, her caretaker in many ways, sat me down. He admitted that he had already been asked. He had looked at the numbers, thought about his fixed income, and realized he couldn't do it. One wrong move, with a loan that size, could jeopardize his entire retirement. So he turned to me. I could feel the weight of his expectation pressing down on me as he asked. At first, my heart answered, before my brain could catch up. She's my mom. Of course I should help. What kind of child wouldn't? But then the cold reality crept in. Co-signing didn't just mean writing my name on a piece of paper. It didn't mean I was helping her try for a loan. It meant that when she failed to pay, I would be on the hook for every single dollar. $18,000. I thought about her $100 a month. I thought about the medical bills, the prescriptions, the groceries, the rent. Where in that tiny budget was she supposed to find even one extra payment, let alone years of them? The truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. If I co-signed, I wouldn't just be helping her. I would be taking on her debt. I would be the one responsible, and something deep inside me whispered the painful truth. She probably couldn't pay. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with nothing but a pad of paper, a calculator, and my thoughts. The numbers stared back at me, cold and unforgiving, as if they were mocking me. The loan terms were simple enough. $500 to $600 a month for 36 months. On the surface, maybe that didn't sound too outrageous. People finance cars for more than that every single day. Some families carry mortgages, student loans, and credit card payments that are 2, even 3 times that amount. But here's the difference. Those families usually have income to cover it. They have jobs, or retirement accounts, or savings tucked away. They have some kind of safety net. My mom didn't. Her only source of income was her monthly Social Security check. $100, flat. No overtime, no raises, no bonuses. Just the same. Fixed amount hitting her account every month like clockwork. Now imagine taking $600 straight out of that. That would leave her with $500, give or take, to survive on for the entire month. $500. That was supposed to cover groceries, utilities, insurance, gas for the car, her phone bill, and most importantly, her medications. And these weren't optional medications either. My mum takes blood pressure pills, thyroid medication, and something for her heart. Without them, she's at real risk. And then, of course, there's the reality of aging. Doctor's appointments aren't rare for her. They're regular. Co-pays, lab work, and unexpected prescriptions all add up. Even the most careful budgeting couldn't stretch $500 to cover all that. I knew the truth before I even finished running the numbers. It was impossible. Maybe she could juggle things for a month or 2, skip a bill here, delay a payment there, stretch her groceries as far as possible. But eventually the walls would close in. Something would fall behind. And when that happened, it wouldn't be the bank knocking on her door. It would be me. Because co-signing doesn't mean you're a backup plan. It means you are the plan. If she defaulted, if she couldn't pay, every single dollar of that loan would land on my shoulders. That realization sat in my chest, like a brick I couldn't swallow. And then another thought crept in. Darker, heavier, one I almost hated myself for even entertaining. My mom is 74. She's frail. Her health has been on a downward slope for years. Even without a catastrophic illness, there are no guarantees at her age. What if she didn't even live long enough to make it through 3 years of payments? The day she passed, the loan wouldn't vanish. People like to think debts die with the debtor, but co-signers know the harsh truth. The payments would still be there, waiting. And who would they be waiting for? Me. It was like being handed a time bomb. Whether my mum defaulted while alive or passed away before the balance was cleared, either way, I would be the one left holding it when it went off. Co-signing wasn't just a temporary favor. It wasn't just a signature on paper. It was a guarantee, an anchor that would tether me to this debt for years to come, no matter what happened. And the scariest part, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Even when I tried to focus on something else, that number, $18,000, echoed in the back of my mind, as loud and heavy as a church bell. I wanted to help her. I wanted to be the kind of daughter who could step in, who could say, "Don't worry, I've got you." But every time I imagined signing my name on that dotted line, I felt like I was stepping into a trap I might never climb out of. And once that thought rooted itself, it refused to let go. As I stared at those numbers, another cruel irony hit me, one that twisted my stomach in ways the calculator never could. I wasn't even in the clear myself. Not really. Yes, I had fought tooth and nail to get to a place where I finally felt stable. For years, I had lived in the suffocating shadow of debt. Credit cards had been my crutch and my curse. Every unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, even Christmas gifts, went on plastic. And every month, I'd make the minimum payment, watching the interest pile up higher and higher, as if I was digging myself into a hole with no bottom. It had taken me years to crawl out of that pit. I sacrificed nights out, vacations, little luxuries that most people take for granted. I packed lunches, said no to social plans, clipped coupons like my life depended on it. $1 at a time, one painful month at a time. I chipped away at it, and finally, I was free. My credit score wasn't perfect, but it was solid. My accounts were in the black instead of flashing red. I could breathe without the constant panic that another late fee, another overdraft, another collection notice was lurking around the corner. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. And that steady place had taken me years to build. But co-signing this loan, it would undo all of it in an instant. One late payment on her part, just one, and my credit would plummet. All the trust I had rebuilt with banks, all the careful progress, would collapse like a house of cards in a stiff wind. I could almost see it happening. The letters arriving in the mail, the ding on my credit report, the shame of watching my score nosedive into the same pit I had just barely escaped. And it wasn't just numbers on a report, it was my future. Because here's the part that made the irony almost unbearable. I also need dental work. Not optional, not cosmetic, necessary. 2 implants, to be exact. For years, I had lived with the discomfort, chewing on one side of my mouth, hiding my smile in photos, pretending it didn't bother me as much as it really did. I kept telling myself, later, once you're stable, once the debt is gone. Well, now I was stable. I had even gotten an estimate, about $4,000. Expensive, yes, but doable. I had planned to finance it soon, to finally let myself prioritize my own health after years of putting myself last. But if I co-signed for my mom's loan, that door would slam shut instantly. No lender would look at me with $18,000 in debt hanging around my neck. My chance at finally fixing my own teeth, at finally choosing myself for once, would vanish the second I put my signature on that paper. And so there I sat, trapped in a vice I couldn't escape. Do I sacrifice my own health, my own hard-won stability, everything I had clawed my way back to, for my mom? Or do I say no, and live with the crushing guilt of watching her struggle, watching her cover her mouth when she laughs, watching her eat soft foods because chewing hurts, watching her feel less like herself day after day while I stand by with my hands clean? The question gnawed at me in a way no numbers could, because this wasn't just about math. It was about loyalty, love, duty, about the unspoken promise children feel toward their parents. You took care of me. Now it's my turn to take care of you. But where did that promise end? At what point did taking care of her mean abandoning myself? Whichever way I leaned, I felt like a traitor. If I signed, I betrayed myself. If I refused, I betrayed her. And for the first time in a very long time, I realized I had no idea which betrayal would hurt worse. That's when the guilt really started to eat me alive. On one side, there was this constant voice whispering in my ear, relentless and persuasive. She's your mother. She gave you life. She raised you. How could you even think of saying no? It wasn't just words. It felt like a chant, an echo bouncing through my head every hour of the day, no matter what I was doing, driving, folding laundry, scrolling my phone, the whisper was there, clawing at me. When I closed my eyes, I didn't see peace. I saw her. My mum, sitting at the dinner table, struggling to chew even the softest foods, pushing her plate away halfway through, not because she wasn't hungry, but because she couldn't manage the pain. I saw her grocery shopping, walking past things she once loved, corn on the cob, steak, even a simple apple, because her mouth couldn't handle it anymore. And then there was the embarrassment, the way she covered her mouth whenever she smiled or laughed, almost as if by instinct, the way she avoided pictures, the way she pulled back in conversations, careful not to let anyone catch a glimpse. At family gatherings, she still joked and laughed, but I could see it, the quiet withdrawal, the way her pride built a wall to protect her from pity. How could I let that continue? Because it wasn't just about teeth. Teeth aren't just teeth. They're dignity, their confidence, their comfort, their being able to sit at a restaurant and order whatever you want without fear, their being able to laugh without shame, their being able to feel like a whole person instead of someone broken. To deny her that felt like denying her something more essential than food. It felt like I would be stripping away the last bits of dignity she still held on to. And every memory of my childhood seemed to rise up and accuse me when I hesitated. I remembered the nights she stayed up when I was sick, rocking me back to sleep, when she had to wake up early the next morning for work. I remembered her scraping together coins to make sure I had lunch money, even when it meant she skipped her own meal. I remembered the sacrifices, big and small, that she made so I could have what I needed. Didn't I owe her this? Wasn't that what family meant? Wasn't this the natural order of life? The child stepping up when the parent could no longer manage. My heart broke at the thought of turning her down. It felt like betrayal, like proof that I was ungrateful, selfish, maybe even cold-hearted. But just as quickly as the guilt swelled up, another voice fought back. A harsher, colder voice. If you say yes, you could ruin yourself. I couldn't ignore it. Every time I let myself imagine saying yes, that darker voice would slam into me like a brick wall. I saw my bank account draining, my hard-earned savings disappearing overnight. I saw my credit score crumbling, years of careful progress wiped away by a decision that wasn't even for me. I pictured myself shackled to a loan that would follow me everywhere, like a shadow I couldn't escape. I imagined drowning in debt, suffocating under a responsibility that wasn't mine to begin with, and worse, it meant giving up on myself. That voice would remind me, louder and louder, you need dental work too. You've put yourself last long. Enough. Are you really about to give up your own health for hers? Are you really willing to suffer so she can smile? The two voices clashed in my head like warring storms. The guilt was a hurricane, pulling me under with memories of her sacrifices, of all she had done for me. The fear was a wildfire, burning through my resolve with visions of financial ruin, shame, and years of regret. And no matter which one grew louder, I couldn't find peace. Not in the morning, not at night, not even in the rare quiet moments when I tried to distract myself. It was always there. The war. The tug of war between love and survival. And deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end easily. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts running in endless circles. Like a hamster wheel I couldn't step off. First came the guilt. It always arrived first. Scenes of my mom suffering would rush in, her pushing food around her plate, her hand covering her mouth when she laughed, her silent embarrassment when someone asked for a photo. I'd see myself standing by selfishly, letting it happen, refusing to step in. The guilt whispered that saying no would make me a bad daughter, ungrateful and cold. But just as I began to lean towards saying yes, fear would slam into me. My chest would tighten, My stomach would not. I'd imagine debt collectors calling, my credit score destroyed. Years of financial progress undone in a single decision. I'd see myself struggling with my own dental pain because I had once again put myself last. And in the quiet of those nights, something darker crept in. Resentment. Why was this on me? Why hadn't my mum taken better care of her teeth when she was younger? She had been warned. Dentists had told her. Why had she ignored cleanings, dismissed flossing, acted as if this day would never come? And what about my uncle, who lived with her and saw her every single day? Why wasn't he offering to help? Why was I being cornered, treated as if it was automatically my responsibility? But the moment those thoughts took shape, shame came flooding in to smother them. She's my mom, I told myself. She's old. She's vulnerable. She doesn't need blame. She needs help. What kind of person even thinks like that? The back and forth was relentless. Some nights I'd swear I had made my choice, that I would say yes, no matter the cost, that love demanded sacrifice. Other nights I'd dig in the opposite way, telling myself I had to protect my future, that it was okay to say no, that she would understand. But every morning, I woke up right where I started, torn in half, paralyzed, no closer to an answer. That was the heaviest truth of all. There was no winning. No matter what I chose, I would lose. Either my stability, my health, and my peace of mind, or a piece of myself to guilt, knowing I had left my mother in pain. And the choice felt impossible. One night, after yet another round of sleepless tossing and turning, I finally gave up on sleep. The clock glowed past midnight, and the silence in the house felt like it was pressing down on me. My thoughts, loud as thunder, wouldn't stop, chasing each other in circles. I sat up, swung my legs over the edge of the bed, and reached for a notebook on the nightstand. My hand trembled as I flipped it open. No more excuses, no more hiding. I had to face the truth, even if it ripped me apart. On a blank page, I drew a line straight down the middle. At the top of one column, I wrote yes, on the other, no. And then I stared at the page, pen hovering, heart pounding. If I said yes, I risked everything: my finances, my credit, my stability, my health. Saying yes wasn't just signing my name, it was signing away my future. I thought about the number, $18,000. At first glance, it's just digits on a page. But for me, it was months of paychecks, years of clawing my way out of old mistakes, countless sacrifices I had made to feel like I finally had my feet under me. Every dollar of that number represented blood, sweat, and tears. And if Mum defaulted, or worse, if she passed away before paying it off, I would be the one left holding the bag. I would be dragged back into debt I couldn't escape. The truth hit me like a punch to the chest. I wasn't strong enough to carry that weight, not without breaking. But then my eyes drifted to the other column. No. If I said no, the risk was different. It wasn't numbers or bills. It was people. It was relationships. It was the fragile thread between a mother and her child. Saying no meant disappointing her. It meant possibly seeing the look in her eyes, the kind that pierces deeper than any creditor ever could. The look of someone who feels abandoned. And that possibility twisted my stomach with guilt so sharp, it almost made me sick. She's my mum, the woman who raised me, who gave up so much over the years. How could I look at her in pain and just walk away? But at the same time, I knew something else. Saying no didn't mean abandoning her. It meant not chaining both of us to a debt neither of us could bear. It meant stepping back, protecting myself, and maybe, just maybe, finding another path forward. For weeks my thoughts had been like a storm, crashing into each other, spinning me in every direction. But in that page, in black and white, something shifted. The choice was brutally clear. Not easy, not at all, but clear. I wasn't just reacting with my heart anymore, or panicking with my fear. I was seeing it, laying it out in front of me, ugly as it was, gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time, control. And as I set the pen down, staring at those two stark words, yes and no, I realized this was the beginning of something bigger, a choice. That wasn't just about teeth or money, it was about boundaries, about survival, about finally admitting that sometimes love doesn't mean saying yes. Sometimes it means finding the strength to say no. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a step. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep me standing. With that small flicker of clarity came a new question. If I couldn't cosign, what could I do? The thought nagged at me like an itch. It wasn't enough to simply say no. I had to find something, anything, that could soften the blow. Otherwise, my no would feel like a door slamming in my mother's face. So I opened my laptop, the screen casting a cold blue glow in the darkness of my room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment, paralyzed. I didn't even know what to search for. Affordable dental implants, help for seniors. Every phrase I typed felt too small, too desperate. At first, the results were discouraging. Page after page, I saw the same thing. Sky-high costs, glossy dental implant websites promising easy financing, and cheerful stock photos of smiling seniors who had probably paid more than a car is worth to get those perfect teeth. Every site screamed the same message. More debt, more contracts, more traps. For a moment, I almost slammed the laptop shut. Hopelessness crept in, whispering, "This is exactly why your uncle came to you, because there really isn't another way." But then, just when I was about to give up, I stumbled on something that made me pause. Medicaid. Some states actually offer limited dental assistance to seniors, not full-blown implants for everyone. No miracle handouts, but sometimes partial coverage, dentures, reduced cost procedures, or even basic restorative care. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't perfect, but it was something real. I leaned back, in my chair, a little spark of hope flickering. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe there were cracks in the wall, little openings we hadn't noticed before. Encouraged, I kept searching. That's when I discovered something even more surprising. Dental schools. Students, supervised by licensed professionals, often perform implant procedures at a fraction of the cost. Of course, it wasn't as fast or polished as a private clinic. There would be waiting lists, consultations, the kind of slow bureaucracy that tests your patience. But it was safe, and compared to the $18,000 price tag we had been staring at, it was almost unbelievably affordable. I felt my chest lighten a little, the knot of dread loosening. There were possibilities. They weren't flashy or easy, but they existed. The more I dug, the more doors cracked open. I found nonprofits that specifically help older adults with an essential dental care. Some were small organizations, working quietly in local communities, but their impact was real. I found charities that ran dental missions, offering free or reduced cost procedures to seniors who otherwise would never have the chance. And yes, even fundraising platforms like GoFundMe came up again and again. I rolled my eyes at first, but the more I read, the more I realized. Real people had raised money this way. Families had covered expenses. Neighbors had pitched in. Strangers had donated. It wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't easy. But it was better than shackling myself and my mother to a loan neither of us could afford. That's when the realization hit me with startling clarity. Co-signing wasn't the only option. In fact, it wasn't even the smartest option. It was just the one that felt easiest in the moment. The path that avoided the hard conversations, the uncomfortable truths, the long hours of research. But life had taught me something the hard way. The easiest path is rarely the right one. The harder road, the one that forces you to sit with discomfort, to think, to dig, to plan, that's the road that saves you in the long run. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Hope. Fragile, flickering, uncertain, but hope, all the same. And that hope told me one thing. Saying no didn't have to mean giving up. It could mean finding another way. In the end, I had to make the hardest choice of all. I said no. It sounds simple when I put it in writing. Just two little letters, N and O. But in that moment, those two letters weighed more than the $18,000 loan itself. My chest tightened, my palms were damp, and my throat felt like it was closing up. I knew this was going to break my mom's heart, maybe even cause a rift between us, but I couldn't keep dodging the truth. When I finally sat down with my uncle and my mom, my voice shook. "I can't co-sign the loan," I said quietly. "I've thought about it. I've prayed about it. I've run the numbers over and over again, and I just can't do it." The silence that followed was deafening. My uncle shifted uncomfortably, clearly disappointed, but it was my mom's face that tore me apart. She didn't yell or lash out. Instead, her eyes softened with hurt, like I had just let all the air out of her last balloon of hope. That look is burned into my memory. I scrambled to explain, to soften the blow. "It's not because I don't love you. It's not because I don't want you to get better. But if I tie myself to this loan, I'll drown right alongside you. $18,000 isn't just a number for me. It's years of my life. If anything happened, if you couldn't keep up, or God forbid something worse, it would all land on me, and I can't carry that, not without breaking." My voice cracked as I said it, because it felt like I was confessing a weakness. But really, it wasn't weakness. It was honesty. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Mom, I promise I'm not abandoning you. I'll help you search for other ways. We can look into dental schools, senior programs, charities. We can even try a fundraiser if it comes down to that. I will not leave you alone in this, but I cannot put my financial survival on the line for something I can't control." The words spilled out in one rush, part desperation, part determination. And then I just sat there, waiting for the verdict. My uncle sighed and shook his head. I could almost hear his unspoken judgment. Family is supposed to sacrifice, no matter what. But I knew in my bones that what I was doing was also a form of sacrifice. It takes strength to say yes, but sometimes it takes even greater strength to say no. That night, when I got home, the guilt hit me like a freight train. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over again. I could still see the look on my mom's face, could still hear the disappointment in her silence. My stomach twisted as the questions flooded in. Did I just abandon her? Did I make her feel unloved? Am I being selfish? Some nights, I still wrestle with those questions. But when the emotional storm quiets, logic speaks louder. I remind myself that co-signing isn't just signing a piece of paper. It's tying your entire financial future to someone else's choices and circumstances. And if that person can't keep up, your own life unravels right alongside theirs. It hurt to say no. It still hurts if I'm honest. But pain doesn't always mean you're wrong. Sometimes the hardest no is the most necessary one. The kind of no that saves you from sinking while still giving you the strength to help in other ways. And that's what I had to cling to. Not the guilt, not the disappointment, but the truth. Saying no to cosigning didn't mean I was saying no to my mom. It meant I was saying yes to protecting myself, yes to healthier solutions, and yes to love that doesn't destroy both of us in the process. Because real love isn't about sacrificing until you're broken. Real love is about finding a way forward, even if it starts with a no. Looking back, I realized this whole situation wasn't really about teeth or money, not at its core. It was about boundaries. It was about love that gives, but doesn't destroy you in the process of giving. For a long time, I thought love meant sacrifice at all costs. You give until it hurts. You bleed if you have to, because that's what family is supposed to mean. And honestly, I think a lot of us are raised with that mindset, that if you say no to someone you love, you're selfish. That if you draw a line, you're cold or uncaring. But life has a way of teaching you lessons the hard way. And this was mine. I learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're guardrails to keep everyone safe. Without them, love turns into something heavy and dangerous, a burden instead of a blessing. So what should you do if you're ever in my shoes? Staring at a loan agreement with someone you love, looking at you, hoping for your signature. You ask yourself one simple but brutal question. Can I afford to pay the entire loan myself, start to finish, without wrecking my own life? Not, can they pay it back? Not, do I trust them? Not, do I feel guilty if I say no? No. The real question is, could I personally take on the full weight of this debt? If it all came crashing down, if the answer is yes, then maybe co-signing isn't so dangerous. But if the answer is no, and for me, it was absolutely no, then the decision is already made. Because co-signing isn't just a nice gesture. It's a legally binding promise that if the other person stumbles, you're carrying it all. And that kind of risk isn't love. It's financial quicksand. The truth is, love doesn't mean carrying every burden. Love sometimes means sitting across from someone you adore and saying, I can't do that, but I will help you find another way. And that shift in thinking changes everything. Because here's what I realized. By saying no to the loan, didn't shut a door. I opened new ones. Instead of locking both of us into years of crushing debt, I freed us to look for creative solutions. Dental schools, nonprofits, senior programs, even the possibility of fundraising. Harder roads, yes. More uncomfortable conversations, absolutely. But healthier, safer, and ultimately more loving. It's easy to confuse love with rescue. To think that if you don't swoop in and save someone, you're failing them. But love isn't about rescuing people at your own expense. Love is about standing beside them while they walk their own hard road, supporting them without sinking with them. And that's what I had to learn. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do isn't saying yes. Sometimes it's protecting yourself, protecting your future, and protecting the relationship from resentment that debt so often breeds. Because imagine if I had co-signed and things went south. Every phone call would turn into tension. Every holiday dinner would carry unspoken blame. That's not love. That's poison. And I refused to let my relationship with my mum be poisoned by debt. In the end, saying no wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It was me saying, I love you too much to let this crush both of us. Let's find another way. And that's exactly what I chose.